There's a reason
Right.
why, nobody decorates their house with mousetraps.
At least not many houses that I've been in. Welcome to the Whiskey and Real Estate Podcast with Alex Peterson. I'm your host, Alex, and tonight I've got my good buddy and first-time home owner, Danny.
That's right.
Cheers to a great night, buddy.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. Ooh, I like that.
I don't know how I feel about this.
Really?
Yeah. I've had this company and their brand, and I have yet to figure out how I feel about it. Yeah.
Maybe it's like what is it? It's kind of like blue cheese. You either love it or you hate it.
I think that might be it, because I know plenty of people that are like, this is the greatest. I don't know why he would hate this.
I
I'm
like
like, I don't know. I'm that weird person in the middle that's not quite sure what to do with it.
If you don't like it, I'll take it.
Sounds good. All right, Danny, well, you just got through buying your first house. You guys closed just last year, right?
Yeah, right at the end.
Yeah, that was it's quite a fun way to end your 2024 with a nice highlight.
Yeah, not the way that we thought the year would pan out, given that there were a lot of life changes. But yeah, we're very excited, and thanks to you for your help.
Thank you. Yeah. So what kind of inspired you guys, though, to even think about buying a house and get into that whole process?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of alluded to it. A lot of life changes. My wife and I are expecting, so I think that was the key motivator. I think
Cheers
a lot.
to new baby.
Yes, thank you. Yes, due next month. So
Ooh,
yeah,
so close.
right around the corner. So yeah, I think that was, for a lot of people, that tends to be like a big motivator. And I think for us, we kind of just recognized living in the city, we needed something with a little bit more space, and that was a perfect opportunity for us to make the move rather than wait and then look, once the baby was here.
Yeah, definitely gets a little more complicated when you've got a newborn and you're trying to work your way through looking at houses. So you mentioned living in the city. When you were trying to figure out where you wanted to live, what kind of directed that?
Yeah, in terms of deciding where we were looking, a big factor for us, given that we were expecting, is being close to family.
Yeah.
So we really love the city. I mean, there's a lot that the city has to offer in terms of walkability and proximity to a lot of either restaurants or even friends that we still have in the city. And at the same time, my wife actually works in the Loop. Okay. So that was another factor for us, was having an accessible either method of transport, such as the train, or just like a closer commute, something that's wouldn't be terrible on the drive-in, which of course it usually is anywhere outside of Cook County. So, but that was probably like the biggest thing. We wanted to be somewhat closer to our family while not sacrificing too much in terms of the distance from the city.
Yeah, no, location and proximity to family and work, all of those things are huge when deciding where you're gonna buy. Did you guys have any must-haves on your list of we absolutely have to have X in our first house?
I don't think there was any one thing. If there was one, it was probably like the accessibility to something like the Metro. While I work from home, my wife works in the Loop, so that was probably the biggest factor. Yeah, I think the main factors, aside from price, of course, were the location, accessibility, and we did want something that had somewhat of a little downtown area. So, of course, we were looking at primarily LaGrange, but I think we had also mentioned something like Downers Grove could have been an option down the road if we didn't find what we were looking for in LaGrange, because they had the same kind of criteria that we were looking for.
Yeah.
I think my wife was also looking for something with like a particular aesthetic, like something that was cozy.
Yeah.
That's kind of what she was going for, and I think we found that in the home we got.
Yeah, of you two guys, who do you think is the pickier person when it came to the home search?
Well, I kind of went into it with the mentality of I'm more on like the financial side, so my background is in the financial space, so I already went into it kind of knowing what the kind of price threshold and the how the money was gonna kind of play out in terms of what our max was and all that, the loan. I work in the mortgage industry, so that was also something that kind of made it so I was like, okay, well, I'll set the kind of like the parameters or the kind of the limits, and then within that I was like, whatever you find that really speaks to you, I'll leave it up to you. Because especially as the mom, I think she's gonna have kind of like that keen sense of like, oh, I envision this as the nursery, I envision this to look a certain way, I envision just like that touch that I don't have. But I think, once we kind of agreed on a certain price point, it was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna trust your judgment. And when we walked into the house, it was just one of those things, like the intangible of like, okay, this is it.
Yeah. So what would you say was the most challenging part then of the home buying process? If there, even was something that you found difficult?
Well, you made it very simple. And also it was something that fortunately was a really relatively quick process. I I don't know, you might have had shorter ones, but I think something that I think for any home buyer, it's just what you don't know. Like not knowing what you don't even know is one of the things that I think you can't really prepare for. Like I think one of the things that you were very helpful in that I was unprepared for was the insurance, like the home insurance. Are the funds that the insurance company allocating for this or that, like are they sufficient? Is it reasonable? Am I getting gypped? Is it, that kind of thing is also so particular to each house where it's difficult to research that on your own. Like if you just go to Google and say like, is, I don't know, $200,000 for this, does that make sense? Like they have no idea, right? Because each line item is so unique that I think that was probably the thing that I had the hardest time with, and I got advice from you. Of course, we spent a lot of time talking about that. Yeah. Also my father-in-law, my dad, my father-in-law, because he works in that space, he does insurance repairs and claims, and he's a contractor. So that was, his specialty was, which was great. And then obviously my dad is a homeowner. I think it's just good to look to people who are homeowners and just say like, you've been through this. What is it that you can offer in terms of advice? And there's so many things that you need to balance with the loan officer, of course, on the lending side, the real estate side, the actual owner, negotiations with them, then the insurance, and each person is different. But for us, also working with our landlord in terms of situating that. So it's just a lot of like juggling. And I think that's probably like the most difficult part. Fortunately, we were able to work through it pretty quickly, but I can see that definitely like bubbling up, especially if there's a lot of competition for a particular home.
Absolutely. So you started your home buying journey. What was the first thing you did when you guys were like, hey, we're ready to do this? How did you guys start?
For us, it was a slow ramp up. So we spent quite a bit of time just looking at places on just Google Maps, like broad search, just saying, okay, well, what interests us in terms of like the criteria that I mentioned and being somewhat close to family while still being within our price range. So we looked at different areas, either just scoping it out by ourselves or going on Zillow and whatnot and kind of just eyeballing things. We did also kind of reach that criteria by doing some exploration. We went to St. Joseph on the Michigan side. We toured that probably like a year prior to us buying the home. So that's probably like when we started kind of thinking of things. The reason we went there is my wife really wanted to be close to the water, and being close to the water within a reasonable amount of money is pretty expensive unless you want to live like on the south side of Chicago, which I did offer. There's a lot of investment there, but I think that's not what we were looking for. And so we went there. We went also to the north side. I lived in Evanston for a while, so we kind of checked that out again, and we just found that it was just too far from our family, so it wasn't really worth it. So we kind of just spent several months soft searching, which I think was helpful for us because it helped narrow. Well, like by the time we came to you, we had a pretty, I would say, good understanding of where we wanted to be, which is a big help because we could say like, okay, we're not going to go there, we're not going to go there. Let's focus on this area, and we kind of had an idea from a financial side. In terms of once we like really like locked in, I would say, essentially once we found the news of her being pregnant. Not too long after that is when we were actually talking to my father-in-law, and as we were talking with him, he had mentioned that he works with you actually on looking up properties here and there because he's looking just for his company purposes and whatnot. And when he mentioned that, he was like, oh, well, why don't you reach out to Alex? Like I work with him, and he's been great, and so like also within the family. And so that was when we were like, oh yeah, like that's a great idea. And I think maybe Jackie had actually messaged Jarrell, got your contact information that way or something. I can't remember, but I think once we came to the conclusion of, okay, let's actually get serious about this, that's when we reached out to you, and then we had dinner, and not too long after we got the house. So.
I mean, that was actually a really quick process. We sat down, we kind of did the whole buyer presentation, we walked through all of the nuances and details of that, and then you guys had some travel planned, if I remember correctly. It was, I don't know, about a month and a half from when we sat down to you guys were ready to go, and you got the pre-approval. We went out, found it was like 5 properties originally, one we couldn't get into, so I think 4 properties was what we saw day one. Talk us through kind of what shocked you or caught you off guard from pictures versus when you walked in the door on some of those places.
Well, of course, any person who lists their home is going to look for the best angles, right? Yes. That's obviously what they're going to do. And I think, especially for the first home that we walked in, a nice home, but it just wasn't for us. When we walked in, we realized, of course, it's not going to be like exactly like it is in the pictures. Plus, when you're looking at things online or through the pictures, you kind of make up the gap, I think. You kind of like, oh, well, everything else looks so nice, like the rest that they don't show you must be nice, and that's not necessarily always the case, right? It also might be there might be a reason why they don't show you that in the pictures. So I think for us, when we walked in, it was also a moment for us to learn, hey, there's a lot that we don't know. Like you spend a lot of time pointing out things here, things there that to the untrained eye we weren't going to notice, and I think that was really key for us because as we went into the other properties, and there weren't many for us to go into, but we started thinking about that a little bit more. We didn't even know that when we walked in that we should be looking at the roof, or we should be looking at mouse traps, or we should be looking at this or that, right?
That's right, the mouse traps.
Yeah.
They had so many in that house.
Exactly, yeah.
But no mice issues, according to their disclosures on that house.
But still, it's one of those things that you're like, okay, well, I have to be apprehensive because there's a reason why, nobody decorates their house with mouse traps.
At least not many houses that I've been in, and I've been in a few.
Right.
So tell me what you're thinking now. You're partway through this one.
Yeah.
When you're smelling it, what do you get? Any particular scents that jump out to you?
It almost, and I could be totally off. I'm not like a whiskey connoisseur.
Yeah.
But it feels a little like grainy I guess I would say like grainy, if that makes sense. It does have it's a little bit sharper, and I'm still trying to distinguish if that's the flavor or if that's just the alcohol content.
Yeah.
But I do like it.
I almost get the idea that maybe it's wheaty is what you're getting.
Yeah,
a bit of the wheat tones, but it's not nearly as sweet or soft as like a 1792 or a Weller Special Reserve. Both of those are wheated bourbons and really tasty. This one, there's something in the middle, like when I'm like drinking it that I'm not really sure what to do with.
In terms of the aftertaste?
The flavor, it's kind of like starts off okay and then it just tapers off a little funky for me. I don't feel like I can place it. It's clearly a bourbon, but I'm not sure if it's a wheated bourbon. If it's just a high wheat bourbon within,
what would
or
give
if
it
it's
the spice?
rye. Well, the rye would have more spice to it. So this could be a high rye bourbon with wheat. So it could be corn, rye, and wheat in the mash bill. Let's do the reveal and find out what it is. All right, we have Four Roses single barrel here. It's only 50% alcohol.
So it might be more on the flavor side.
Alcohol content is not terribly high for a bourbon. There it is, the Four Roses single barrel. So this single barrel you may not like, but you could buy another bottle that looks almost identical and be like, this is the greatest thing ever. Anytime you see single barrel, keep that in mind. Not all barrels are going to give you the exact same flavor because the wood that they're aging in is different. So it ends up giving you slightly different variances on the exact same mash bill. So what goes in is the same. What comes out, thanks to the wood, is slightly different, which is why so often you get those small batches. They blend it to get their perfect tone that they're going for. Overall, not terrible, not great for me. I'd probably give it a 6.5. Definitely something I don't mind drinking. I'm not gonna turn my nose up to it if that was, given to me. Probably not something I'd be going out of my way to buy either.
I think I'm going to give it an 8.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this is one you'd be
solid,
like, I'd put this on my shelf.
Yeah, for sure. It's not particularly standing out, but I think it's pretty solid. Yeah, I like it.
Well, that was bottle 1. You ready for bottle 2?
Let's do it.
Let's go. We're back. We've got round 2.
Round 2.
Cheers to some more great conversation. That is drastically different.
Yeah, very. It feels a lot smoother on the way in. The way that I'm thinking about it, it feels like a different color, but that doesn't make sense. It's a taste that I'm trying to describe.
Yeah.
But I see this as like, I don't know, like a different color almost.
I'd be willing to bet they are different colors.
Okay.
This one I get kind of an oakiness mixed with a bit of peat, so you kind of get that little bit of smoke. It's subtle, just a hint of like a smokiness on the back end. Especially, I get it right at the end. It kind of lingers a little bit. I'm getting dried fruit. This one's very pleasant. It just drinks easy.
Yeah.
It's got a kind of a mid viscosity to it, so it doesn't like
That's the word.
super coat my mouth.
Yeah.
But it also
Viscosity.
doesn't just like evaporate instantly the minute it hits your tongue.
Yeah.
So it like sits nicely and like that flavor just kind of lingers.
Yeah.
Which
The viscosity
nice.
is different. Yeah.
that's gonna be a fun one to drink. All right, man. So did you have any surprises after finding the house you fell in love with and closing on that house? Were there any surprises in that window?
So going through the inspection and then
Yeah.
There was one big surprise, and we kind of went back and forth on whether it was almost like a Schrodinger's cat situation on whether or not there was a sump pump. We didn't know whether or not there was one because when we went through the initial walkthrough, for some reason, I guess we thought there was one. We went with one of my father-in-law's longtime friends, and he had said he had seen a sump pump. I can't remember why we started to doubt ourselves on whether if there was one or not. I think it was actually part of the conversation that I had with the insurance agent, and they asked if there was one, and I was like, oh, you know what? I didn't recall seeing one.
Right.
So I asked around.
And I don't think there was one on the inspection.
There was one on the inspection.
There was one
Yes.
mentioned on the inspection too.
Which threw everything off. So we
Yeah.
asked the owner, and then she said, no, there's no sump pump. And of course, she's going to know.
Right, or you would at least hope so.
Exactly, right. I mean, she had been there for several years, and she had basically remodeled the whole thing. And yeah, it was just like a back and forth. Like, is there one? Is there not one? Like, should I be concerned that there isn't a sump pump? Like, I've only ever lived in houses that have a sump pump.
Yeah.
So double check to see that there's a sump pump, I guess, is my takeaway.
Yeah, this was the house that you guys found and settled on was a very interesting style of home. So it has the Cape Cod look from the front, but it functions more like a split level. in the way that it is. With the lower level, actually has a walkout, but it's an English walkout. So you've got like steps going versus it being a direct walkout access. And then there's a bit of like a crawl space almost underneath the main level of the house. Yes, it's a unique setup with all those like split level styles. It really is hit or miss on whether or not there's a sub pump on that side of the house underneath the main portion of the house. So how did you reconcile that? Is there something you would have done differently? Is there something you wished would have changed? Did it add extra unnecessary stress? Like, yeah, talk us through that.
One of the adjustments that we made, or at least part of the conversation that I had, of course, with my wife, but also with, again, my father-in-law, and I bring him up because this is what he does. Just making a prudential decision that we don't know how water runs in LaGrange in terms of if they have serious flooding issues. Now, it's not in a flood zone or anything like that, but as I was doing research, because of course, it turns out that there wasn't a sump pump, there were areas within LaGrange that could have some issues with flooding, and I just wanted to make sure that, especially that first year as we're getting settled in, I did actually buy additional flood insurance, just like the super basic one, just to make sure that we kind of had a little bit more peace of mind.
Yeah.
And also, there needed to be some regrading done, especially I think on the north side of the house.
Yes.
And so part of that, as well as not having a sump pump, and then I've only ever been in the houses that do. So I just thought, just peace of mind. I'm just going to go for like the really simple flood insurance and just make sure that we're covered there. Now, whether or not we keep it over the years, obviously we'll kind of decide as time goes on. But I think that was one of the adjustments that we made.
I think that's a great adjustment. Another really cool side note is you can get insurance and you can buy whatever insurance you need to give you peace of mind. Even if it may not be deemed necessary for your spot, you're not in a flood zone, but to get that extra peace of mind, it's fantastic. And we'll have an episode coming out down the road here a little bit with an insurance agent who's going to talk through all of those fun little nuances of insurance. Definitely have sympathy for your father-in-law having to do all of that work constantly and being in the trenches, sometimes against these insurance companies to get things paid out for clients. I mean, that's just
a lot of back and forth. And,
and forth. What piece of advice do you wish you had gotten prior to starting the home buying journey, if any? And if you don't have anything that you wish you had gotten, what advice did you get that was super helpful?
Well, the one that stands out is the one actually that you shared, which was don't be surprised if this process goes a lot shorter than you thought it might. Because I think we were kind of preparing for this to take, a few more months, kind of more typical home search process where you don't just go under contract the first day you go out looking for a home.
Yes.
And so that obviously forced us to course correct. And it was all great, of course. But I think had we known how quick this was going to be, maybe we would have prepared a little bit differently. I don't know exactly how, but, the last thing you want is, and this isn't something that we had to go through, but I've heard stories of people that have where they have like their dream home, and for whatever reason something doesn't line up the way it does, and when they lose out on that, they're like devastated, of course, because they already started picturing their life there. And fortunately for us, that wasn't the case, but I could have seen that easily being the case if we weren't ready. Fortunately, there was nothing else kind of that we were up against at the time. I think another thing that panned out, and maybe this is just something that people can consider, is the seasonality. We went into the market right at the tail end of the summer, or I should say really the tail end of the fall, I should say.
Yeah, you guys were coming in right in that fall, tapering off moment.
Exactly. And so I think that's a moment when a lot of homeowners that have listed are maybe looking to get whatever they can if they have something already lined up, or for whatever reason they need to get rid of the property, or to buy something else, or whatever it is. That really allowed us to kind of go in and not have to face the competition that we likely would have seen in the spring and summer months.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely worked to your advantage. I mean, you guys went from seeing houses, it was one of the 4 houses we saw that day, and you made the offer, and we actually were able to get it under ask price because of the fact that it had been on market a little bit. It was the tapering end. We were able to close within 30 days, which was exactly what the seller wanted, because they were actually already under contract and trying to get their house sold so they could get into their next place. So timing is, you can't perfect it, but understanding that you could walk into a house day one, fall in love with it, and kind of find yourself a little shocked. Also, on the other side of it, it could have been 2-3 months of looking and missing, and that's very normal too. So that's one of those wild cards that is so hard from my side of things, because I understand people want to be able to plan a little bit and be like, okay, but Alex, how long is it going to take me? And it's like, this is my best guess. Here's your windows. The minute we find you something, I can give you more precise numbers, but that search, depending on your location desires, your needs within what the house has to have, how picky people are, that can definitely slow down a home search. That is for sure. So you guys opted to use a realtor in the process. Why did you choose to use a realtor versus just kind of going it your own?
Yeah, I mean, we had done part of the like quote unquote soft searching ourselves, and I think we just realized as we were starting to get serious about our search that we just needed expertise, experience that we didn't have. Where, of course, nowadays there's so much more accessibility with things like Zillow and Redfin and things of that nature, where you can go in and do a lot of the searches yourself. I think it's also led to the market being more competitive in a way where prior to those tools, I would imagine there were people that were in the market and out of the market. And now it seems like there's people that are maybe like kind of soft searching all the time. And it kind of leads to a situation where, you may find yourself up against someone who wasn't even quote unquote in the market, but because they found some, they were waiting for like 3 years for this exact property type to come online, they ended up competing with you. And so I think part of that was also just, recognizing that we both have full-time jobs. We can't dedicate ourselves completely to this. And this is, a huge task, a huge job in and of itself. So for either one of us. So we just decided, hey, you know what? We have someone in the family that, we trust, that we know, who we align in terms of values as well. I think that's a big part. That trust component is something you can't understate. And so, I think that was the reason why we were, super confident going into it with you.
My 2 cents to everybody who's looking, make sure to vet your agents out. Just like Danny was saying, you want to make sure you've got an expert and someone you can trust in your corner.
If it's someone that you know their character, you know what they stand for and their values, I think it's much easier to make that. And I think for us, we were like, we're confident to take that step.
Love it. So when you finally got those keys, what was that like to get the keys to your first house?
Well, it was snowing, which was unexpected.
Yes,
it was like the first snowfall.
And it was nasty too.
Yeah, it was. I don't think we've had snowfall really like that since then.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I thought when I got the keys was, how do I not have a shovel? Like all of a sudden you start thinking about all the things that you don't have. I was like, I need a shovel, I need a lawnmower, I need like all these things. I think as soon as you get the keys, you realize, it obviously materializes as part of the responsibility that you now have of ownership, where when you're renting, of course, you don't have that same sentiment because it's not your property, right?
Right.
And obviously people try and take care of their rental property or wherever they're renting, but it's not the same feeling. So as soon as you get the keys, it's like, wow, we're on the hook for everything, right? Like this is all my responsibility now. Yeah, of course, we were super excited. It was kind of like it was still something we needed to process because it happened so quickly. The realization of, hey, this is real and now this is something I need to like take care of became really apparent, because as soon as we left, I was like, okay, I need to go to Menards, and I knew we need to do all these things and come back, and like we needed a new car because I can't fit a ladder in this car, all these things. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. What was the first thing you guys did after you got your keys, you go back to the house? What's the first thing you did?
What did we do? We took some pictures. We were so happy. I think we called our parents, just letting them know like, hey, we're here now. We actually went back and we were friends with our attorney. And so he came back and we kind of gave him a little tour. It was the first tour of the home, and he loved it. Yeah, after that we kind of just relaxed for a little bit, and it wasn't completely unfurnished. Like we had negotiated a couple pieces from the previous owner, and so we just spent a little bit of time there just soaking it in. We didn't get like the classic first time home buyer experience where you just have like nothing.
Nothing's in there.
You just sit on
eating
the
off the floor.
Exactly. But no, it was still like a nice moment just for us to like sit and just like soak it in. And kind of just do a little walk around again, and then I remember when we left, I like quadruple checked that like nothing was on, or like that the stove wasn't on and that the water wasn't running, because again you just realize like, hey, this is our home now.
Yeah, this is mine. I have to do all this.
Exactly.
What one piece of advice do you have for anybody who's thinking about buying a house, whether this year or maybe next year? What do you have for them?
I think the biggest thing for us that really was the impetus for going into the market with the right mindset was recognizing that the home wasn't primarily a financial product. That really what we needed it for was for our family, right? It was something that was right for our lives and where we were in terms of moving forward with, the baby on the way. That's not to say that, of course, the financial aspect of a home isn't something that's relevant. Of course it is. The financial side for buying a home is really important, and you can look at it as something where, you make investments into it and, it pans out down the road. But I think the biggest thing for us was we were more concerned with, is this the right fit for us and for our family in terms of, where we are in our lives? And I think that really helped us make the right decisions in terms of what we were prioritizing as we were looking through the different homes.
I love it. All right, man. Well, I just finished this glass and really kind of want some more. What are your final thoughts here now that you've gotten through the glass of it? Yeah?
I like this one more, yeah. I think this is an easy sipper.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this one is, for sure, one that I'd like to know which one it is. Does it have to be 0.5s? Because I'd give it like an 8.7.
An 8.7?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I'll give it like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I was thinking like in that 8.5 to 9 range. This one is definitely something. I haven't had it in a while, so it kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Let me get it. All right, so we have, I don't know if that's Kayo or Kayo whiskey. I'll let you all judge me for how I pronounced that. But this is a 5 wood, so they actually finish it in 5 different barrels, and then they blend it all back together. So they take one mash bill, put it in these 5 different barrels, one of which is ex-bourbon barrels, which was part of why I had grabbed this, because I know you're a bourbon guy. But this is a Japanese whiskey, and they finish it in bourbon, French oak, and then 3 other Japanese woods. It's very, very tasty.
How'd you come across this?
So thanks to running a whiskey club, this actually was one of the bottles that we did on our Japanese whiskey night. And
nice.
I bought it on a whim because it was ex-bourbon and French oak. I was like, I mean, it can't be terrible with those two. There it is. That is something new.
A little bit less alcohol as well than the prior.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, my friend is actually back from Japan. He lived in Japan for a while, a high school friend of mine.
Nice.
But I think he's going to be moving back to Japan again. He ended up marrying someone in Japan. So I'm going to have to ask him. I'll take a picture of this, send it to him, and see if maybe this is something he's aware of. Is this in terms of, is it like a top shelf or?
If I remember correctly, this is like a $50 bottle.
Okay.
So nothing crazy.
Accessible.
It's accessible. I think I picked this one up at Woodman's. I don't know if Benny's would have it, but Benny's is always a good shot as well. Definitely a delicious Japanese bottle. For all of you who don't drink Japanese whiskey and you're just a bourbon fan, you're sleeping on Japanese. We'll be reviewing more Japanese whiskeys down the road, because that is definitely an area of whiskey that I have just continued to fall in love with. Your buddy in Japan, he can get access to Japan only Blantons. So if you're gonna have him look for a bottle, and from what I understand, it's so available over there that he can order it on Amazon and have it delivered to him, and then just bring it back with him. So just stash that away for another day, because that's a hard to get bottle if you're not traveling to Japan.
For sure.
But I know Blanton's has several different bottles that are exclusive to different areas.
He'll be back in Japan in the not too distant future, so I'm definitely gonna have to pocket that one, because he comes to Chicago every once in a while. So maybe I'll just slide him
Make sure he brings one back.
For sure.
Oh, well, Danny, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing with the viewers just your journey and your process. Glad your wife was able to stay home and just kind of relax a little bit tonight with that baby on the way. So wishing you all the best, and thanks again, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.